Harry blasted. The guy's a hypocrite.
You know, my jaw dropped. 2 effing grifters. So...
Prince Harry's ongoing descent into total madness has continued overnight.
Why would there be so many redactions? Why would anything need to be honestly redacted? This is a charity form. Look at that whole page redacted around the budget. Like, excuse me? How does he allowed to get away with this? But look at this budget commercial blocked out.
But is it really a charity project at all? Is it just being used as a money-making scheme? Dodgy involvement from the disgraceful Duke.
For a long time now, one question has continued to follow Prince Harry and Meghan everywhere they go. If the Invictus Games reportedly spent more than $63 million, where did all of that money actually end up? Then, after months of growing curiosity and public debate, the moment finally arrived when long-awaited financial documents were released for everyone to examine. Those records eventually became public, but what people discovered inside immediately caught attention for all the wrong reasons. There were pages covered with blacked-out sections, important details missing from view, and entire portions withheld under personal data and commercial sensitivity exemptions. In simple terms, the information clearly exists, yet the public has not been allowed to see the complete picture. That naturally led many people to ask another question. What could possibly be so sensitive about the funding behind the Invictus Games that it requires this amount of redaction? Was it simply standard privacy protection, or were there financial details that officials believed should remain confidential? Those questions only fueled even more public curiosity. Although large portions of the records remain hidden, the information that is available allows people to connect scattered pieces and build a broader understanding of what happened.
When they said Invictus is a scam, the veterans are being used for PR, privately funded faux trips with lavish accommodations and Meghan's merchandising schemes. That's not how charities work.
And Harry and Meghan got a really nice vacation out of it, with lots of adorational speeches and clapping and crowds gathered for them. So it was really odd, but I do think that people are starting to cotton on.
We, here in the United Kingdom, have committed £26 million. I mean, we are broke. We're broke. And what, he's got £4 million worth of sponsors? I mean, Paula, what else is he doing? Like, seriously, Harry, this is your full-time gig and you're asking the taxpayers for 26 mil and you've only been able to come up with 4 mil. It's a disaster. And this is a guy who claims that he's all about philanthropy and all about humanitarian causes. Well, he's not, because actually that's what you need to do. You need to drum up the money to do good work.
When the final financial report became available, many expected straightforward proof that the overwhelming majority of the money had been directed towards supporting veterans and delivering the competition itself. Instead, what they found appeared far more complicated. Before moving into the newly uncovered details, it's worth briefly revisiting the information already discussed on this channel, because it provides important context for everything that follows. Once that's covered, we'll look at several additional details that have only recently come to light and have sparked even more discussion. According to the official financial report for the 2025 Invictus Games held in Vancouver and Whistler, the event operated with an overall budget of approximately 63.2 million Canadian dollars. Critics have also drawn comparisons between Invictus and other military sporting competitions around the world. While every event has its own unique structure, scale, and operating costs.
So, also, it doesn't pay for the veterans' transportation or insure them. I mean, what is this paying for?
The insurance thing is insane.
It is.
Insurance.
Lots of private jets, lots of camera crews, lots of security, a documentary, beautiful fashion, of course, from Meghan, 5-star hotels they stay in. I wonder, I mean, somebody is doing it. There's an audit being done on the $63 million right now. I think this is going to turn out very, very badly.
This is the very reason why everyone who originally worked on and set up Invictus no longer works there. Since leaving the royal fold, the foundation has become a cash cow for Harry and Meghan, and no doubt some others who are involved. It's all bubbling to the surface.
Some observers continue pointing to programs like the Warrior Games in the United States, which are widely reported to operate with a significantly smaller budget, keeping the discussion about overall spending very much alive. As those figures became more widely discussed, they sparked an even bigger debate over whether the overall cost of the Invictus Games had grown far beyond what many supporters originally imagined for an initiative centered on veterans. For many observers, the conversation was no longer just about the total amount spent, but about how that money was ultimately allocated and whether the balance reflected the event's stated mission. Out of the overall budget, approximately $30 million came from taxpayers. Another $28.4 million was provided through sponsors, corporate partners, and private donors. The remaining income was generated through ticket sales, merchandise, licensing, and other event-related revenue streams that helped complete the overall funding package. This is where many of the public questions really began. When people examined the published financial breakdown, they noticed that roughly $57.7 million.
But people are a little upset about where the money is going because right now there's been a 63% drop in actual grants to wounded warriors, despite the fact that they have more money in their bank than ever from carryover and in Vancouver. So I think the public interest is waning. And also in this time of economic disparity, people really want to know where their money is going to. And there are lots of other places that actually support veterans, may give them prosthetics if they need, may build a wheelchair ramp at their home, which is necessary, may do things that really help people as opposed to helping Harry's ego.
Have been allocated to event operations. That represents nearly the entire $63.2 million budget, leaving many wondering how the remaining funds were ultimately distributed. According to the report, that operating category covered accommodations, catering, workforce expenses, technology, broadcasting, opening and closing ceremonies, marketing, event villages, transportation, logistics, and a wide range of administrative costs required to stage an international competition of this size. That immediately caught people's attention. Only around $5.5 million was identified as being placed into what was described as a long-term legacy fund designed to support programs before, during, and after the Games. Some critics questioned whether too much of the budget appeared to be directed toward organizing the event itself, instead of expanding long-term veteran support. Others argued that many operational costs are necessary to successfully host an international competition for wounded service members, making the issue more complex than a simple comparison of numbers. In several areas, additional financial information.
But the term charitable activities includes the cost of running the games themselves, not direct grants or services to veterans. And the problem is that us here in the UK, us taxpayer fools, are committing funds to this. I can't believe this.
I don't think a lot of veterans actually are devastated. The reality is, if you go deeper into Invictus, a lot of veterans are actually more upset, asking where all the money actually goes to.
There is something not sitting right with this charity. Charities that have something to hide should not be trusted, especially with so much NGO fraud being exposed in the last few years.
Including the precise value of certain licensing fees is either not fully disclosed in public summaries or appears partially redacted in official documents. At the same time, different financial reports categorize spending in different ways, depending on whether costs are listed as event delivery, charitable activities, operational expenses, or administrative functions. As a result, the very same expense can appear under different headings depending on the accounting method being used, and those classifications can significantly influence how efficiently the organization appears to operate on paper. Because of that, even when the figures are technically available, the way they are divided across multiple categories makes the straightforward comparisons much more challenging for the public. For many observers, that lack of clarity remains at the center of the discussion because understanding where every dollar ultimately fits is essential when evaluating the organization's overall financial transparency and efficiency. Instead, the funding passes through several different layers before reaching its final destinations. It moves across organizing bodies, delivery teams, event infrastructure, logistics, production, security, branding, and numerous operational functions. That is where many people say the picture starts to become more complicated, because when they hear the phrase veteran-focused event, they naturally expect that the majority of the funding is flowing directly toward veterans and veteran-related support programs. However, the publicly discussed figures present a more complex financial picture. Direct grants to veteran organisations have been reported at around £200,000, an amount that appears relatively small when compared with an overall budget measured in the tens of millions. Rather than following a simple path from donations directly to veterans, the funding appears to move through a multi-layered structure involving organisers, event operations, and foundation accounts before reaching its intended purposes. Prince Harry remains closely connected to the discussion because his name has become strongly associated with the Invictus brand, its public identity, its fundraising efforts, and the expectations many people attach to the project. Once that connection is made, the discussion naturally extends beyond accounting alone. It becomes a broader conversation about organizational structure, public confidence, financial transparency, and what the published figures actually represent behind the scenes. The available documents also indicate that a new senior executive position has reportedly been introduced with a six-figure salary. At the same time, cash reserves have grown to approximately $2.3 million. As a result, some observers have noted that a larger share of available funds now appears to be remaining within the organization instead of being distributed externally. The discussion does not end there. Reported legal expenses have also increased substantially, rising from amounts in the tens of thousands to approximately $150,000. Publicly available reports do not provide a detailed explanation for the full increase, leading some commentators to ask additional questions about those costs. Viewed individually, each of these developments may have its own explanation. However, when considered together, some critics argue they point toward a broader pattern involving increased revenue, reduced direct distributions, higher internal operating costs, growing financial reserves, and a more complicated financial structure overall. That brings many observers to the central question. If a charitable organization is receiving more funding than ever before, while reported direct support for the people it exists to serve appears comparatively limited, how should that financial balance be interpreted? Before looking further into that discussion, it's also worth remembering that last month, Prince Harry received significant international attention after Time magazine placed him at the very top of its Time 100 sports leaders list. He was not simply included or recognized among the honorees. He was ranked #1 in the leaders category. The magazine described him as a global force in sport, highlighting his work with the Invictus Games and placing him ahead of some of the most recognizable names in modern athletics, including LeBron James, Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, and 96 other prominent figures from across the sporting world. From the outside, it appeared to be a significant public success, but that achievement also prompted a different question. What was happening behind the scenes at the very same time? While headlines celebrated Prince Harry's recognition, another story was quietly gaining attention, one involving an Invictus Games competitor, a seriously injured military veteran, and claims that after suffering a life-changing injury connected to competition, he did not receive the level of follow-up support he had hoped for. That contrast is what has captured so much public attention. On one hand, Prince Harry is widely recognized as the founder and public face of the Invictus Games, an initiative built around supporting wounded, injured, and sick service personnel and veterans. According to public accounts, the veteran involved had already endured extensive medical treatment before participating in the Games. Reports indicate that he had undergone more than a dozen surgeries while also coping with PTSD and other long-term service-related injuries. Even with those challenges, he chose to compete in the Invictus Games. He described taking part as a deeply personal milestone and an opportunity to reconnect with his military identity while allowing his family to witness that important chapter of his recovery. At the time, He could not have known how much discussion his experience would later generate. It is that difference between global recognition and one individual's reported experience that has fueled much of the conversation. The Invictus Games have received widespread praise for promoting sport as a pathway toward rehabilitation, rebuilding confidence, strengthening identity, and supporting the psychological recovery of service members living with physical and mental injuries. At the same time, some critics have questioned whether the financial records and organizational structure fully reflect those goals. After reviewing the available documents, spending figures, and published reports, they argue that the event appears to place significant emphasis on its public profile while asking whether enough attention is directed toward long-term veteran support. Others disagree and maintain that hosting an international competition naturally requires substantial operational spending. That leads to a broader question that continues to divide public opinion. Has the Invictus Games remained focused primarily on its original charitable mission, or has the organization evolved into something much larger and more complex over time? Share your thoughts in the comments because this remains one of the most debated aspects of the discussion. Many observers also began calculating the estimated cost per competitor. The Vancouver Whistler Games featured just over 500 competitors representing 23 nations. Based on the reported overall budget, some estimated that the event cost well over 100,000 Canadian dollars for each participant. That figure alone surprised many people and quickly became another major talking point. However, several participating veterans have said they were still responsible for covering certain personal expenses during their involvement. If that is the case, many people naturally ask the same question. If individual participants were not personally receiving anything close to $100,000 each, then where was the remainder of the overall funding allocated throughout the event? Another point that continues to attract attention is the reported level of direct grants provided to veteran organizations when compared with the overall size of the event's budget. Earlier publicly discussed figures referred to grant totals of approximately £530,000, while more recent reports place that amount closer to £200,000. If those figures are compared directly, they represent a reduction of roughly 63%, which has prompted further discussion among observers following the organization's finances. That noticeable difference between the total amount spent on the games and the level of direct funding reported for veteran organizations has become one of the main reasons the financial structure continues to receive close scrutiny. As more people review the published reports, the central question remains straightforward, even if the answer is far more complicated. If a charity-branded international event is managing tens of millions of dollars in funding, why do the reported amounts flowing directly to veteran organizations appear relatively modest by comparison? And what types of operational expenses, administrative costs, or other financial commitments account for the gap between those headline figures? Those are the questions many observers continue asking as additional information becomes available. Prince Harry is widely recognized as the public founder and leading figure associated with the Invictus Games. At the same time, some analysts point out that the project's early development also benefited from broader institutional support, including assistance from royal foundations, experienced advisors, government cooperation, and established organizational networks that helped launch the initiative during its earliest stages. That perspective does not necessarily reduce Prince Harry's contribution or involvement. Instead, it adds another dimension to the wider discussion about leadership, responsibility, long-term governance, and the public expectations attached to such a high-profile charitable organization. Another topic receiving increasing attention involves sponsorship patterns over the years. Earlier editions of the Invictus Games benefited from strong financial backing provided by major corporations alongside a broad network of commercial partners and supporting organizations. Some critics argue that if private sector sponsorship declines over time, the event could become increasingly dependent on government funding. Supporters, however, respond that public investment reflects the broader social and community value they believe the games provide. Either way, the balance between corporate sponsorship, charitable donations, and taxpayer contributions is expected to remain a major part of future financial discussions, with many observers continuing to watch how that funding mix develops in the years ahead. When you begin putting all of these pieces together, one theme keeps appearing over and over again, and that theme is transparency. No matter which side of the debate someone supports, many people agree that clear financial reporting is one of the biggest issues surrounding the conversation. The more complicated the structure appears, the more questions naturally follow, especially when millions of dollars in funding, public attention, and charitable expectations are involved. Meghan's role in the Invictus Games is different from Prince Harry's, but she still plays an important part in how the project is viewed by the public. She is not involved in the day-to-day management or operational decisions behind the games. However, her presence alongside Harry during major appearances, public events, interviews, and media coverage places her within the broader public narrative surrounding Invictus. Because of that visibility, every appearance connected to the games tends to attract far greater attention. When Meghan attends an Invictus event or appears in coverage related to the competition, reactions often become divided. Some people see her participation as bringing additional awareness to wounded veterans and the organization's mission. Others argue that the spotlight naturally shifts towards celebrity coverage instead of remaining focused on the competitors themselves. That difference in perception has become one of the biggest talking points. Supporters believe the attention generated by Harry and Meghan helps attract international media coverage, encourages donations, strengthens fundraising efforts, and introduces the games to audiences who otherwise may never have heard about them. From that perspective, greater publicity can translate into greater opportunities for veterans participating in the competition. Critics, however, view the situation differently. They argue that when a humanitarian project becomes closely associated with globally recognized public figures, media coverage can sometimes prioritize the personalities involved rather than the people the charity was created to support. Whether that criticism is fair or not, it continues to be part of the wider public discussion whenever the Invictus Games make international headlines. The debate also extends beyond personalities and into the broader question of accountability. Many people are not simply asking whether the games have made a positive impact, because countless competitors have spoken about the friendships they built and the confidence they regained through participating. Instead, the discussion often centers on whether the financial reporting is detailed enough to satisfy growing public interest. As charitable organizations become larger and manage increasingly significant budgets, many donors, taxpayers, and supporters expect reporting that is easy to understand and detailed enough to explain how major spending decisions are made. That expectation is not unique to the Invictus Games. It is something many international charities face as they expand and operate across multiple countries, funding sources, and organizational structures. Another factor adding to the conversation is the growing amount of public attention surrounding every new financial filing or annual report. Each time updated figures are released, they are carefully reviewed not only by supporters, but also by journalists, financial commentators, and members of the public looking for changes from previous years. Even relatively small differences between reports can quickly become the subject of discussion online, especially when large sums of public or donated money are involved. That level of scrutiny is unlikely to disappear, particularly as preparations for future games continue. That brings the focus towards the future. The next Invictus Games are already scheduled for Birmingham in 2027. And preparations are expected to continue over the coming months. Financial discussions surrounding that event are already receiving significant attention because reports indicate that the UK government has committed up to £26 million in public funding. Since those funds come from taxpayers, many observers believe it is reasonable for the public to closely examine how the money will be spent and how financial decisions will be communicated. Large public investments naturally invite public questions. Some commentators have asked whether Invictus has now grown into a global organization capable of continuing regardless of who serves as its public representative. They argue that after more than a decade, the Games have established their own identity through participating nations, volunteers, sponsors, medical professionals, military organizations, and veterans themselves. Others strongly disagree with that assessment. They believe Prince Harry remains the emotional center of the Invictus Games because of his military background and his role in launching the project. Many supporters argue that participants continue to value his involvement and that his presence helps preserve the original vision that inspired the competition in the first place. Whichever viewpoint proves more accurate, the coming years may provide important answers. Much will likely depend on how Birmingham 2027 is organized, how veterans evaluate their experiences, how successfully the event attracts sponsors, and whether financial reporting satisfies growing public interest. The location itself also adds another layer to the conversation. Birmingham has experienced significant financial challenges in recent years, including well-publicized budget difficulties that resulted in the city declaring bankruptcy in 2023 before later emerging from that status in early 2025. Against that backdrop, some commentators have questioned whether allocating tens of millions of pounds toward hosting a major international sporting event represents the best use of public resources. Others respond that large events can generate tourism, investment, jobs, and long-term community benefits that extend well beyond the competition itself. Sponsorship has become another important part of the discussion. Reports suggest that Birmingham currently has a more limited list of confirmed sponsors than some previous editions of the Games, with estimates placing combined sponsorship at around £4 million. Earlier Invictus events, including Vancouver, reportedly benefited from broader corporate backing involving major international companies and a much larger network of commercial partners. If those comparisons are accurate, the financial structure for Birmingham could look noticeably different. Government funding appears set to cover a substantial share of overall costs, while private sponsorship may represent a smaller portion than in previous years. That naturally raises additional questions about how future funding will be balanced, whether more commercial partners will join before the event begins, and how organizers intend to manage expenses while maintaining the experience expected by participating veterans. Ultimately, much of this discussion returns to the same place where it began. Transparency remains the issue many people continue talking about. Clear reporting, understandable financial breakdowns, and open communication are likely to remain central topics as preparations for Birmingham continue. Whether someone views the Invictus Games as a remarkable success story or believes there are questions still waiting to be answered, one thing is certain: the conversation is far from over, and future reports will likely receive even closer attention than before. As preparations continue and additional financial reports become available, many people will likely keep watching to see whether those reports answer the questions already being raised or introduce entirely new ones. The discussion surrounding the Games is unlikely to fade anytime soon, making future updates just as closely followed as the current debate. Now, I'd like to hear from you. Do you believe the current financial structure reflects the mission of the Invictus Games? Or do you think greater transparency would help build more public confidence? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because I'm genuinely interested in hearing different perspectives on this story. Your opinion helps shape the conversation, and respectful discussion is always welcome because people often bring different viewpoints and information to the table. If there are official reports, financial documents, or public statements that you think deserve more attention, let everyone know in the comments as well. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next update. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.